Warning. Dino's Tinkershed videos tend to run ridiculously long. This can irritate some viewers and send them into raging comment trolls. For your convenience, you can skip through the video with chapters in the description. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Dino. For a while now, I have been wanting to upgrade my stock DR650 handlebars to a crossbarless fat bar. And I've been thinking about which bar to buy and how to mount it, and I've finally come up with a solution that I want to try, and it's not exactly the ideal bar that I want, but I couldn't get that one. However, I still want to go through the exercise of upgrading and seeing if I like the bar that I did purchase, and it'll give me an opportunity to show you how to install an aftermarket bar on your DR650 if you still have your factory bars in place. There's a few challenges to upgrading bars. The first is, what style of bar do you want? There are sort of two different choices you can go with. There is a factory 7/8 diameter bar that typically has a crossbar like on the stock DR650. And these are great bars, there's a lot of options, but many people, myself included, would like to eliminate that crossbar so that I can use that space, for me anyway, for mounting cameras and maybe moving my GPS around into different spots, trying things like that. But it does give you some options to have that real estate open without that small crossbar in place. The second option, and the one that I'm decided to go with, is what they call an oversized or fat bar. And this has an 1.1/8" diameter bulge down where your triple clamp bar clamps are. They probably hydroform these, as I was kind of thinking, I wonder how they get that bulge in there, and it's probably done with a hydroforming tool where they run high pressure water, put the pipe into a die, and basically inflate it. I think that's probably how they build these things. Regardless, this gives you a very robust 7/8 bar that bulges out in the center to a much more robust 1 1/8" diameter. Now the challenge with this is the factory triple clamps won't fit on 1 1/8", so you have to replace those. So I picked a set of those up as well, and I'll show you how to install those onto the bike after I show you how to remove the originals. The other challenge is the factory bars have holes drilled in them that register both your left and right controls, your turn signals and your starter mechanism on either side of your bars are registered with these holes using a small molded plastic pin in the control housings themselves. In order to mount them onto an aftermarket bar without these holes, we're going to grind those pins off, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, it doesn't really matter what bar I'm putting on. There's tons and tons of bar options out there, and if you're shopping, it can get super confusing. I know for me, I looked through so many different bars with different pullbacks and different rises and different bends, and in the end I settled on a YZ style pullback because it was similar to the factory bars, which I don't actually mind, other than that crossbar and the fact mine have a small tweak in them when the bike was dropped at some point. I'm not sure if it was myself, because I've dropped it a couple times, or previous owners. It's not super noticeable, but it's time that I straighten that out. To install these oversized bars on the DR650, I'm gonna need a couple components like I talked about. The first of which is a new riser. The stock riser again is for 7/8 bars. These ones here are for 1 1/8 inch oversized bars, and they have an ability that you can adjust these stack washers here to give you up to, I think, a 1-inch rise in the bar itself off of the triple clamp. It comes with new stainless steel hardware and lock nuts and stainless washers. They're made in China. They're an off-brand. I think they're Otom brand here, but they look reasonably well. They use both a Torx head or a 10mm socket to tighten these down, but overall the build quality looks pretty good and they come in a nice gloss black finish. Of course, you need a set of bars. I had so many great responses from everyone out there about what type of bar to get to run on my DR650. And I had really hoped to get a set of Pro Taper Adventure bars, and I was even thinking I would get the high model, which raises it up quite a bit. I ordered a set off of Amazon, and the next day they canceled my order and refunded my money and said they couldn't ship them because they didn't have any stock. And I started hunting around, and for some reason I just couldn't seem to find a set of these Pro Taper bars. Now those ran about $138 Canadian plus shipping, depending on whether you got them from Amazon Prime or ordered them from Royal Distributing or something like that. But there were some other comments that said either a YZ or a CR style bar works good with a small riser. And I found this set here for $34. These are a Doosan brand out of China, but they get very good reviews and they seem to be very, very robust. The wall end thickness here appears to be about 4 or 5 millimeters thick. They have knurled ends for the clutch side of the bar, and the red anodizing looks pretty sharp. And at $34, I'm willing to try it. I really been wanting to make this video for a while to show you how to install bars, and I thought, well, between the 1-inch riser and the slight rise in these, they're pretty close to the standard DR bar by the looks of it. I think I'll be okay. So why don't we get started by looking at the disassembly process to get the original bars off of the bike. I'll start by removing my ram mount that's actually mounted down here to the bar. To accomplish this, I'll just use an Allen key and I'll just unthread this bolt. And I'll have to find that. Next, I'm going to remove both of my mirrors. Technically, you don't have to do this, but it makes the controls a little easier to handle as you take off the old handlebars. To accomplish this, you're going to need a 17mm open-ended wrench. We'll break the lower nut free, and then, well, the mirrors just spin off. They're threaded into the clutch lever on this side, and on the other side, I think it's the brake lever that they're threaded into. Let's do that. Here's the challenge when you start modifying these DRs, or any motorcycle for that matter, is because I have a 2-inch long extension on my mirrors and I have this custom fairing and a custom dash, I could not just unwind mine. If yours is stock, you won't have any problem at all. But for me, I had to go one more step and break my mirror out of the actual holder on the bar. But now that that's done, I'll just put this back together and set it up on the bench. The next step can be really easy or can be an absolute bear sometimes, and that is removing these bar end weights on the end of the stock bars. I still have mine, and many DR riders do if they have the stock bars. Most people take them out and replace them when they put bark buster guards on here, but you can see I still have the factory little white, wings of safety on there. I don't know what you call them. Eventually I'm going to get rid of those as well. But even though I apply a liberal amount of anti-seize to the mechanism inside of these, for some reason they always seem to seize up and become difficult to get out. The way that I do it is I start with a very good quality JIS screwdriver. This is a number 2 Japanese industrial standard screwdriver. So it fits into the Phillips head, or the JIS head, really, really well to begin with, and gives you the best chance of not camming out that fastener. Secondly, this JIS screwdriver has a strikeable end. So you can put that into the bar end itself, and then using a small ball peen hammer like this, you can strike it a few times to help seat the screwdriver into the fastener, but it also helps to shock the bolt inside and break it free if it's stuck. It's not a guarantee, but it does sometimes help. The other thing I like about this particular brand of JIS screwdrivers is the strikeable end also has a fastener end, and in this case it takes a 13mm box end wrench on there, which gives you a little bit more leverage as you're pushing in and trying to undo that fastener. This one was really, really stiff, but I was able to break it free. And once that fastener breaks free, you can thread it out until the bar end becomes loose, and then you just pull the bar end out. It's basically a rubber stopper in there, and as you tighten that fastener, it pulls a washer closer to the bar end and squeezes that rubber stopper, and that's what holds it in the bar. They can be a real bear to get out. Worst case scenario, I've had to put vice grips on the end of these and pry them out, pretty much destroying the finish on them, but you can get them out. That's really a lot about such a simple little device like that, but that's how it works. Now that we have our bar end weights out, and before we loosen anything on the triple tree or the bars themselves, I'm going to go through and loosen all of the fasteners that are holding things like your controls, your throttle, your brake, and your clutch levers. I'm going to do that now before I loosen the handlebar. This should make it much easier to get them off when I finally do take the top of the triple tree clamps off of here. So let's go ahead and do that right now. When it comes to these 10mm bolts in your control levers here, try to use a 6-point socket if you at all can. It saves rounding these off. They're not terribly strong bolts that are in here. And on the clutch side anyway, you don't have to take the bolt all the way out. It just needs to be enough that the lever control can slide like this on the bar. The front brake master cylinder and lever is held on with 2 8mm headed bolts, not 10mm. So you're going to need both a 10 and an 8. And again, I'm going to use a 6-point socket as not to round these off. I've seen a few videos where that's happened. Take note also that I'm going to take these bolts right out. I'm going to remove the tie strap, but do make sure when you put it back in, it's oriented properly. There's an arrow indicating up. Okay, I'm going to pull these out and take this brake right off. I'm just going to put these right back into the brake lever here. This way I know where they are. They don't run away on you. On the underside of your brake master cylinder, there's 2 wires. This is for your brake light. I'm just going to pull these off of the master cylinder. like that. The black wire faces forward of the bike, and the red one, if I can get it off here, there we go. The black with a red stripe is facing backwards on the bike. You can kind of see. So the back one, black and red, the front one, red. And now I can just lift this right off and set it out of the way. On both sides, there's also these reusable zip ties, essentially, that you can take off to release. Hopefully I can get them off. To release the cables from the bars themselves. There are 2 screws here on the bottom of your turn signal indicator pod. I'm going to loosen these. I'm not going to take them all the way out, but you do need to loosen them enough so you can turn the bars. So they need to be loose enough here. There's a locating pin inside that you need to be able to slide this. There we go. So you can see I have these loose but not all the way out. You can push up on it and now it turns, which means we'll be able to slide it off of the bars. That locating pin inside we're going to have to deal with later in the video. On the right side control pod and throttle, there are 4 JIS bolts. I'm going to crack these similar to what we did on the other side, and this will allow us to move these. And in fact, I think I might even take the back plate off on the starter pod here. I think it'll come off easy enough without messing anything up. Not 100% sure, but I think it'll work. Let's see. We'll do this for you so that you can see what's in there. There we go. And you can see that hole in the bar right there is the locating pin on the back cover that I just took off. And that's designed to make sure this pod is positioned properly from the factory. We're not going to need that locating pin hole on the new bars or the pin on the cover, so we're going to eliminate it. But for now, I'm just going to take this, and again, I'm just going to put everything back together so I know where it is. I do see a lot of other videos where people struggle trying to stretch the cables and move the bars around to get off the throttle cable in and turn on the other side the clutch and the controls for your turn signals and whatnot. Today, all I'm going to do is take the throttle control right off. I'm just going to pop off this rubber cover here, and I'm going to loosen these 2 JIS screws on the back of the throttle housing, and then you can take the cables off and should be able to slide the throttle tube assembly right off of the bike. And if I have to, I think I can flip that around if I need the extra length in the cables, so that the cables come from the bottom instead of the top. I think I've seen that done in other videos. I don't know if I'm going to have to do that, but for now, I'm going to take those cables off and we'll get this off the bike. With the 2 screws out, you can just separate the halves here. They come right off like this. And I can set these up onto the bench. It's a pretty simple system. And then your throttle cables come through and poke out just like a bicycle cable would, like for your brake cables. You may need a small pick or an awl like I have here to push them out, but they do come out relatively easily. And in fact, I think, there we go. If you want, you can put them right back in place so you don't mix them up. Like that. And just set them aside. There are a bunch of different ways to remove grips. If you're not going to reuse them, you can just slice those off with an X-Acto knife and peel them off like a banana peel. In the bicycle shop that I used to work for, we'd use a screwdriver and stick it in the end here and then spray some WD-40 and they would slide off. And then you clean the WD-40 out with some dish soap, let it air dry, and they would become really nice and sticky again on the inside. Here, I'm going to use some air pressure to inflate the grip and hopefully slide it off. To do this, you need an air gun that is not a safety tip. It's only got one hole on the end of it. It doesn't have holes on the side that make it safe. You've got to have the unsafe one to do this, I suppose. I'm just going to peel the end of the grip up, and then I'm going to, for this one anyway, I'm going to pinch my finger on the end and try to inflate the grip. Give it a little bit of a twist as I'm doing it, and it should come off. There we go. Comes off relatively easily, even with the end cut out of it for the bar weights. In order to get the clutch lever and the turn signal pod off of the stock bars, I'm gonna take out the bolts that support that into the triple tree. Essentially, I'm gonna take the bars off at this point, slide them to the right side of the bike, and then slide off both the control pod and the clutch lever at the same time, and the bars should be out of the way. You'll need a 12mm socket, again 6-point, to break these free and get the bars off. Oh, and they are tight. Here we go. This is why a 6-point works so much better than a 12-point. Wow, because there isn't the potential to strip the tops of those heads off. Okay, there we go. With the top of the clamps off, we can now pull the bar up and hopefully move everything towards the end. The tricky part is, again, the pod itself that has that locating pin. Everything else should slide out relatively simply. And look at that, we're just about there. But you can see how much easier it is to take the throttle side off than to try and fight back and forth to get these off. It's way less stress on the cables. And look, we've got the bar off. The last thing we need to do before we start reassembly is to take off the bottom part of the bar clamps that are attached to the triple tree with a single bolt that runs down through to a nut that uses a 14mm socket or a wrench. There just was not enough room in here to get a socket. So I ended up using my 14mm box end wrench. This is not the best lighting in here. It is coming off though. And here is the old bar clamp versus the one that I just bought. You can see the one I just bought is 1 inch higher. However, I'm not sure if I'm even going to be able to utilize that amount of space. You can see how much longer the bolt is here compared to this one. And this has some kind of weird proprietary bolt up here versus a standard, hex bolt. So I can't just take this and put it into here. In the end, I've realized that I can just take that smaller spacer off and I still get 3/8 of an inch rise here. It's not a lot, but it fits nice and clean in the DR, and I'll just tighten it up. I'll go slide this one in now. I'll just slide these down and in, and I did notice also that there is a orientation to these. They're longer on one side than the other. With my large tank, I think it's better if I orient it with the long end facing forward. So that's what I'm going to do. These just push in and they come out the bottom. You want to put your washer and your lock nut on, but I'm not going to snug these up until I get the bars in place. Then I can tighten them down and it'll make sure that the bar is centered in the saddles of the clamps. All right, I have these loosely tightened in on the bar clamps. You can see they're still loose on the triple tree, so I'll go down and tighten those up now. but you get a first look at how these look, and I really like that little flash of red. They really do seem to sit up just enough for me. I think they're going to be quite comfortable. I just want to check everything looks like it's going to clear. So I'll go ahead and I'll tighten these down, and then we'll get putting all the stuff back on. It's just reverse order. I don't think I need to tell you too much about the levers in that, but we do need to talk a little bit about the controls, those little nubs on the controls, and what we're going to do about those. All right, let me tighten these down to the bottom, and we'll torque everything down, and it should be really good. Remember these locating holes? They have a corresponding dowel that you can see right here molded in to the control pods. This one is off of the throttle side. So this is your starter switch cover. And I think they really put these on so that all the controls are exactly the same on every DR when they come out of the factory. Aftermarket bars do not have these locating pinholes or dowel holes. In order to facilitate remounting the grips and the controls, we need to eliminate this dowel. This is just plastic. What I'm going to use is a Dremel with a sanding disc on it, and I'm going to come in here and just sand those down. You could use anything like a chainsaw file, or probably even a razor knife if you wanted to take your time. You could just get in there and cut it away. My money's on this sanding drum doing a good job. You do not want to grind away any of this surface. This is what clamps down onto the bar itself and holds the pod in place. I'm just going to get to work and sand this off now. I'm just going to remove these clamps, and now we can start the reassembly process. Let's pop the bar off. We're going to start with the clutch itself. And in fact, I think I'm going to stretch that open just a little bit, just so it slides on the new bar a little easier. You don't want to get too crazy doing this, but you can give it a little bit of a nudge. Knurled side is your clutch side. That should go in there like so. She's still pretty tight. In fact, I might pull this cam bolt right out of there, or this lock bolt, and just sort of stretch it a little bit as I put this on. There we go. And before we get too much further, I am going to put on the controls here for the choke and the bar. Hopefully it goes on. So this is a little bit fussy, but you'll get it. And we're going to keep our moving ahead here. I have a feeling once I get past this knurling, it'll be a little easier. So again, I'm not putting too much pressure on this pry bar, just enough there so I can get past the knurling. And I think we're in good shape. Before I lose it, I'm going to put the bolt back into the clutch. There we go. And now we can reattach this, because we can just bolt the throttle side back on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll see you on the throttle side. I am only going to temporarily tighten these. I'm not going to tighten them all the way up, because we're going to want to place them properly once we get the grips and the tubes on. putting back the cable. Take the long cable, you insert it, you turn the cam up so it's facing up. You put the long cable in the first slot, the one that's closest to the seat, and then wrap it around like that. Then you take the shorter cable and it goes in the back hole, and now you can see everything's lined up. Next, take your clamshell and place it so it captures the grip on the inside. And then these little tabs here are going to slide right in to the clamshell on both sides. I'm going to try to do this so that you can see how it goes back together. So I'm doing it kind of backwards. Now make sure you have your bolts with you and your screwdriver before you start this process. And the top bolt up here is a little bit longer. So you want to make sure that you've identified that before you start to put this thing back together. As you tighten down these clamps, you do want to make sure you tighten them evenly, meaning the space here is the same as the space on the other side. So you do this by alternating the back and then the front bolt on each side until you get it down to the torque, which is 17 or 18 foot-pounds. It's not really a lot because there's a lot of clamping force with one of these. So I'm just going to tighten these down, and that wraps up the bar, getting it all nice and tight and in place. We've got everything buttoned up here. Obviously, I'm going to need to take this for a ride and then tweak the position of the bars. The bars actually come with alignment gauges embossed on them, so you can roll them forward or back, side to side, to make sure that they're centered and that you get them in the position that you like, where the bend is in the right position. I'm also planning on putting on a new set of Uri grips, a full-length set. I had to cut these ones down because the stock bars would not allow me to move the controls inboard a little bit. But I want that little bit of extra grip length so I can move my hand around a little bit on the bars. So I'm just going to mount this one up into the stock location, and to do this there's all kinds of ways you can do it. Some people put black tape on there and then add a little bit of gasoline and then slide this on, and that activates some kind of polymer in the black tape, and apparently it sticks. Some people use spray paint. They'll spray paint the inside of the grip and stick it on, and most people will use grip glue. I'm going to use hairspray. Again, I learned this trick in a bicycle shop 30 years ago, maybe more than that now, maybe 35, almost, yeah, probably about 35 years ago, I guess. And I always buy the cheapest hairspray you can with lots of sticky lacquer in it. This has got Extreme Hold Salon Selectives from the dollar store. I paid $1.25 for this. I'm going to spray, hopefully. Oh, my cap is so gummed up it's not going to spray. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to go and get more hairspray. Well, I got that hairspray and I got my clutch grip mounted up, and I've taken the bike out for a ride. My initial impressions are really, really positive. I actually think this YZ bend with a small riser is probably better than if I had have put the high bars on. It feels really good when I ride it, whether I'm sitting down or standing up. In fact, standing up feels very natural with just a little bend in my knee, the bars come right to hand, and because they're a little bit wider, you feel like you've got a little more leverage when you're riding standing up. I really like it. The other thing I really like is the ability for me to position my selfie stick here a little bit differently than I have in the past. I'm able to get some crane shots that I wasn't able to position with that crossbar in place. It allows me to maybe film a little bit from behind me or in front of the motorcycle or down low without having to reposition the magic arm that holds that selfie stick in place. So I think future ride videos should benefit from the ability to position this in more varieties of positions. That's another bonus as well. So I hope you liked today's instructional video on how to do all this. There's many ways to do it. This is just one way. It's the way that I do it. But I do hope you enjoyed it. And if you still want to hear more about these bars, let me know in the comments down below. And after I've ridden with it for a month or so, I can give a short, I promise, short follow-up video on my longer term thoughts on this particular bar setup. So once again, thanks for stopping by. I hope you're having a really nice day. I know that I have putting these bars on, and I really do hope to see you soon here on Dino's Tinker Shed. Tinker easy.